the police, right, is competing. This is right.
Societal
So,
competitions.
right. It's this a certain level of what competition is endemic to the structure of society. Our society is built on wars. Wars are competitions, right? More of yours, take more of yours than mine, etc. Right. So I think anything built on competition as a fundamental aspect cannot escape that, right? And even passively and unconsciously, we're trained, for life is meant to be a competitive sport, right?
Life is a
And
competition.
it's rare to see life as a competition. I mean, sorry, life is cooperation, right? Life is a commune, right? Life is biodiversity operating in tandem, right? As a version. And I mean, yeah, I feel that's what happened. And I feel like that gives us a sense that, we're competing against the coronavirus.
All right, now okay.
Right? We don't look at the
All right.
coronavirus as, and I don't think that we should, but just for shits and giggles, excuse my language, it becomes are we what aspects of the coronavirus serve a role, right, in society, or viruses at large, right? And viruses are always looked at as being competitors, right? Or do we look at them as competitors as something that we can beat, or something that's competing with us for a certain goal?
More of
So,
us than this virus. This virus is a constraint on the freedom at which we want to live in certain capacities. So because of that, we must compete to eradicate this virus before the virus competes to spread itself within its just adjusting environments.
right, on that level, you frame it. The metaphor comes back. Coronavirus is our competitor.
Personification. Yeah.
And so it becomes, okay, now that that's the case, what all is entailed and spun out of that, right? And I think at a certain level, it satisfies us and our human condition, at least in this modern human context. It satisfies us and gives us a certain structure in life, even with the horrors of something like the coronavirus. So the coronavirus in and of itself is just pure destruction. But when you say the coronavirus is our competitor, then you're able to fight it. It gives you a sense of purpose. It gives you duties, things that you can do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Very, 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 very well put, because at the end of the day, most people, especially when it comes to the life is a competition metaphor, when it comes to that weaving into, coronavirus is a competitor metaphor, it's this repulsion. And if for whatever reason feels like this more natural human nature repulsion of, life is cooperative, collaborative. And I wonder, as a quick side quest before we hop into the next topic, what is your perspective on why you feel as though we are so repelled from that fact? Why is it if it's you and mine? Is it because there's that separatism or that space or that distance that exists between A and B naturally, and because that we have this implicit coding within us, or almost a inflexibility to completely avoid the iteration and say we're not even willing to expose ourselves to the idea of freestyling to whether or not you are better or worse than me. It almost seems like this implicit human default. So what's your perspective on that? Why do we repel life is collaborative so heavily?
I think it's less of a I think it's more of an educational thing, so I think it's more right than it is biological, right? Because there are examples of that kind of collusive nature, or that collaborative nature, right? And you see it in different cultures, right? But if you live or were brought up in a pedagogical system based on showing the real benefits of competition, right? There's genuine benefit in that biologically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
just the same as there's a genuine benefit in, you know, communal type approaches to things and collaborative approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if you're trained in that system, I think you'll find, well, it moves the goalpost, right? And it
Mm.
pushes the consequences to both. Yes.
Okay.
But one is maybe a little bit more distant. One
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle is a little bit more sustainable, right? In the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
One is definitely, you know, less sustainable, definitely more for short-term gain and short-term advantage. But the issue is that you've never lived in a world where you never had either, right? They've
Mm.
always been in a world operating simultaneously, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've had collaborative societies having to go to blows with competitive societies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's not been an adversarial thing. It's been in a and what can be in more in a hegemonic type fashion, right?
Mm.
We're bringing you this new tech or these new ideas to give you a competitive advantage against mosquitoes, right? To give you a biological advantage against mosquitoes that you didn't have before, but that's only born out of having a competitive unit within the world. So I don't think it's about eradicating competition from the planet and replacing it with collaboration and then eliminating collaboration, replacing that. I think it is that again, that cohabitation and knowing when and where to accept the benefits of either, right? And then balancing them properly, right? Using them for what they're worth, and then understanding what the cost, do the cost benefit analysis, the economy of you know of material, what have you, and then make decisions based on that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think that's that. I feel it's a separate kind of thing. It gets more into more macros, but even as an artist or as a poet or something like that, I think it's that same thing: collaborating with words or competing with words, right?
Mm.
Collaborationist, or are you in constant competition with yourself? Are you
Mm-hmm.
actually collaborating with yourself? Is your conscious in competition with your unconscious and your subconscious?
Mm-hmm.
Was your conscious in collaboration with your subconscious? And you have a flexibility allowing one to come in and come out very naturally. But or are you creating under market forces, which is pure competition?
Mm-hmm. 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 Wow. That's a lot to, I mean, that's really a lot to absorb, because I feel like most people, because when you pulled it down so leveled towards the end, where most people can grab onto that and say, wow, maybe the confliction between myself isn't necessarily only societally based, but
Mm,
perhaps when we pull ourselves back, it's the mutual, or the natural inclination to try to benefit ourselves and be collaborative with our own success, and
mm,
then being competitive with our own limits is what
mm,
almost creates distance between us and the abilities to be able to find that balance between collaboration and competitivism. And so I feel like that definitely has so much value for people to sit with and kind of stew on that. But speaking about competition, speaking about, societal projections and perspectives, as, and here's a quick metaphor for you.
mm.
An hour is a minute. When it comes to 15 minutes left in this I'm blown away. So there's a metaphor for you, and depending upon your time, we can keep it rolling. But ultimately, for this next piece, it was basically based on this nation. This war is a competition aspect.
Mm,
There's been a lot of international talk and a lot of international perspective, propaganda, speech, things of that nature. Today, when Americans talk about China, there's a negative connotation attached
mm,
to it for various reasons: political, economical, and obviously epidemiological.
mm.
Your docuseries Beaten Path explored China from a martial arts, cultural, philosophical standpoint. What can you tell the audience about China that has gotten overshadowed by COVID-19 coverage to be able to bend that perspective?
Mm. I think one. for me being there multiple times, having business there, being able to be a tourist there culturally and then embed to a certain degree, is that China's massive, right? And I think we kind of discount how big it really is. And what is required to govern successfully a population and a landmass that big, and what type of system you would need. I mean, you're literally dwelling in a place where it's the states could be countries in and of themselves. Different provinces can be whole countries by themselves. And what does it require to rein that in, and eliminating kind of some historical aspects, which may be for a different conversation. But just to answer directly, I think it's understanding how big China is, understanding also how human China is, right? Sometimes we lose the humanity that exists in the other. And it almost can come across as, and Chinese folks will kind of like agree with this, is the Chinese face kind of has a lack of emotion. So you don't really know what's going on versus, say, our face, an American face, right?
Very expressive, very
always about expressing multiple emotions and this and that and that. Not saying that they don't, but the resting Buddha face, you know.
the natural stoic.
It's very hard. In some cases, it can be very hard to read what's actually happening, and because you can't understand the language, right? So it's you doubly lost. So your mind is searching semiotically for some type of sign of what is happening, right? And so you default to facial expressions, right? You default to gestures and things like that. But then also understanding that sometimes those facial expressions aren't there. The range that you would expect, right, isn't necessarily there. And understanding that people are, and in that, not to confuse that with a lack of that's you being unable to understand them, right? It's not that they have a default or they have a deficiency in expressing themselves to you,
or an obligation to reach across the table and compensate for what folks are unwilling to do.
Right. And I think you'll realize, like, if you get there and you get a chance to be in China and go to the different provinces and the different places, you realize that the people are very human, right? And all its capacities, right? They're very nice. They're very mean. They're very happy. They're longing. Some of them are very poor. Some of them are very rich. Some of them hide the fact that they're poor. Some of them are trying to hide the fact that they're rich. It's the same level if you went to any city, country in America, right, and just seen a range of different people, but you're able to read somewhat, not with a certain level of resolution, right, about who's doing what. When China, there's a learning curve that you have to come into contact and come into embrace to get that understanding. So I think it's some misconceptions about how human they really are, that how really it's the same, right? But in certain cases, how much better you have it, because levels of poverty there, again, as a metaphor, right? Like that metaphor hides that there's a lot of people living like, and that are, very, very intelligent, went to school, have a degree, have this, have that, but that's only one layer of society. Then it becomes, you have to go get this job, but there's 1,000 people competing for that same position. And what do? Trained in med and science and this, but you can't get a job. Now you're like washing clothes, right? And it's very, very interesting how much of the society is based on your success in the educational system and your ability to get a job, and then the people who fall out from that and can't compete in that space. And I think Americans would be very surprised how the average Chinese citizen lives, what they want in life, their attributes, that they want to feed their family, they want to have a good education for kids, they want to be the same aspirations that are no different than the American dream.
Exactly. And that's one of the characteristics, you know, that I feel as though I would 100% agree. I mean, backpacking through India, being through certain areas of the planet, um, going back to, you know, to Jamaica, going to these other places where, you know, you see folks in jungles, you see folks like sleeping outside, right? And it's one of those things where it's so enormously humbling. It just depends on what capacity you are to be able to accept what you're seeing, right, when you're seeing it in a way. So some people, I'm sure, can go to whatever province of China or whatever section of India, whatever section of any impoverished country, Southern America, Central America, you have it, and they're like, can't wait to get back home to get these, you know. And in a way, they're so glassed over with the idea of, you know, there's that, again, that repulsion of that collaborative and the competitive, to the point where there's this dissociative effect that takes place, where I feel as though implicitly people know everyone's dying all over the planet. But as long as it's not, again, me and mine, there's this separation that they create. So, you know, with that, it's wild to think of.
Go to the next question, but I'll just to close on that. The main metaphor one of the metaphors that I left out of China with, which was this kind of discovery, was that China is very ghetto. Like it's like the hood. So if you up with the same mentality that you have living in the PJs or living in the hood, that is one of the cultural mainstreams that is there in the country. Wow. And even if you can't speak the language, anything, if you just allow yourself to embed in that particular undercurrent that this is the ghetto and this is how I move through the projects or I move through the hood, China becomes very familiar very fast.
Really? That's a trick. That's a trick.
Certain parts, all parts, but certain parts. But that is there. Like that current exists. Right?
Wow. Yeah. So many different linearities that people wouldn't even think of, you know. So to move on to the next piece, you know, expanding upon the metaphor, because people are, you know, unfortunately being faced with this circumstance and have less access to healthcare. They didn't get that job. They didn't get that opportunity, things like that, especially like here in America, regardless of their skill set, education, knowledge. Expanded upon the metaphor, life is temporal. How important is it for an artist of today, whom is time stamping this period, to create for the mind state of tomorrow from your perspective? And as a small second caveat, because this is the buzzer beater, what would you like to be remembered for in the generations to come?
Okay. So the first one, the second one first. I always say that if I've added value, remember me for that. If I've done one good thing to add value to your situation, remember me for that, right? But if I've brought harm or made the world a worse place than how I found it, don't remember me at all. Like, just bury me way deep into the woods with no head, you know, in the wintertime, blindfolded, so you don't know.
Face down.
Right. So that piece, like, remember me if I add value. Yeah. If I don't remember me at all. The other piece first, like in terms of the temporality and, you know, creating now for the next, so to speak, I guess, to make it a little bit more succinct for me to answer.
Sure.
I mean, we do that anyway. Like, we create in the real time for the next. Even freestyle, you don't end where you start.
That's a fact.
Right? It's always over there. You wind up over there.
It's a translation.
Indeed. Right? So it becomes, you're already doing that. It becomes, what type of future do you want to see? Right? What type of future do you want to have?
Orientation.
Right? And speak to that. Right? And do that with a certain level of intention, with a certain level of authority and authorial intention. Yeah. And we have more control over the future than we think we do, than we think we don't. Right? We actually have a lot of control and handling on how the future is going to generate itself than we think we don't. Right? And I think it's to open yourself up to that, you know, understanding that relationship. I don't want to call it power, but just that awareness of that particular situation, and that you can actually speak to it and bring it to fruition. Right. So I think there's a certain fallacy in the real time versus the future, and speaking the now for then or the now for the next, because you're doing that anyway. Like, you don't have to waste time or intention now trying to prepare for that, because you're going to do that anyway. You're going to start writing this rap at 6 o'clock. You're not going to be done until 8 o'clock. You know, so, but are you trying to keep 8 o'clock at 6 o'clock? Right? Are you trying to freeze 6 o'clock? Right? And then no matter how much time has passed, this is constantly frozen into 6 o'clock. Right? Like this verse that I wrote, this idea that I had, this structure that I built. Or are you building flexible, you know, things, flexible institutions that evolve over time?
Which agency is the most optimal to yield that translation? And when you have this authorial intention, it's the idea of, you know, what do I, it's almost like stepping into your own power. That temporality is all within the scope of what you deem it to be, it seems.
Yes, there's definitely this, if you're trying to constantly relive the past, even that in and of itself is an inefficient way to go about it, because life is constantly dynamic, right? There's all new interpretation projected onto, new metaphor, new entailments pulled out of that to make it relevant to the new times, right? So classical music, what it means today, is still classical music in title, not what Beethoven was doing, right? It has picked up so much other attribution, so much, it's put on so many different coats and shoes.
It's a fossil fuel
today. Yeah,
it's a fossil fuel.
Yes, very much so. That concept of static, but having to be able to be burned and manipulated and fluid, right? To be used. So when you give it a certain level of utilization, it break that the stoicness of it begins to degrade and break down. And are you comfortable with that natural occurrence happening, whether you want it to happen or not? Become of stress or tension or anguish for the creative. It's going to, right?
So no matter where your process ends up landing you, ultimately it's just having the awareness that building up to accepting almost a level of inevitability is what extracts the core power from the circumstance, the power and grace from the circumstance, kind of within the same breath. Because then at that point, an artist can be able to say, I'm referencing the past to repurpose and inform the present, to be able to project into the future and inform the next step in a way. Okay. Wow. I mean, again, this has been an amazing conversation, IT. We still got like 2 minutes, but I wanted take a quick moment to say coronavirus is still a thing. Make sure. Got him.
Got him.
You know what I mean? But no. To end this, we have another quick thing that is in fact succinct. But on a positive note, what has been your best moment or experience in 2020 so far?
I mean, honestly, is to see full circle actually pulling off the final exam. That's like fantastic to me. Like to see this.
You know what I mean? We just
to labor through and to see the SOSA ITs, apps, JMs, and even IRs, masters, GMs, everybody just kind of like expanding and pushing, right? And doing the work and archiving this, and then also progressing this forward. So that's been me, just watching the ITs do their thing, and sticking true to, you know, the FUV of it all. Has been a great thing for me. But also just, you know, through the ups and downs, knowing that people are doing their best to be safe, to see, you know, that people that the people that you love are still around and in the midst and thugging it out, and everybody's struggle. People stepping up to the plate in the midst of this struggle, and not breaking or folding or cracking, and actually finding new ways to be flexible, to your original point, to attain a flexibility in the midst of one of the greatest constraints of all time, which is, you know, human existence. It relates to COVID-19, which is a big thing, right? For some of us, for a great portion of humanity, we're losing a lot of our elders, and we're losing a lot of that database, you know, that that information may be gone. So, you know, it is a bittersweet. That's bitter in that aspect, but also hopefully recognizing that is what's happening, and that we do the due diligence to embrace our elders, our databases right now, and extract from them those stories that, you know, if they weren't here, we wish that we had. And operating on that right now. So I believe that that's something that I love to see and would like to see more of.
100%, 100%. What's on the horizon, I think, in terms of what you have in scope when it comes to your dynamism, your freestyling throughout this process, as things become more open and things become more malleable, as we should say.
Well, I just got invited to be on the board of a non-for-profit in San Francisco called Gray Area. So,
congratulations.
And so it takes me back to my theater days in high school. Definitely looking forward to that. The podcast, the Lupe and Roy show, for sure, is definitely grow and keep building and add value and make interesting. And what else? Working on my Grandmaster submission. You know, I'm hitting my dub. So it's about that time.
I mean, I'm gonna need the link. I think. You know what's going on with this, yo? It's been like, you know, is it dropping with Detox? Oh, it's the bonus track on Detox.
Oh, stop it! Leave me alone, IT. But I mean, just enjoying the time. That's all this is.
Of course.
Under the constraint as best you can, and keep things FUV. You know.
100%. Well, either way, IT, myself, and as well as all the ITs and SOSA, appreciate your effort towards building the infrastructure, creating the curriculum. I believe it was a heavy component as to building the bridges for these IRs, for these ITs, for the GMs and the JMs and you know, and the apprentices to be able to all come together. I definitely think, you know, as time progresses, we all are, I guess, implicitly, you know, journeymen prep in our own way, or actively, I guess, pre-working that muscle, especially through the perspective of a lot of the, you know, year apprentices are in their GM bag right now, which is a beautiful thing. So with that being said, either way, I encourage everybody who is a part of this live stream to check out our previous episodes. All these folks have brought an intense, amazing, heavy registry of value to not only the concept of freestyle, but also the concept of what it is to look within oneself, to find that level of adaptation, to find that rigidness, to find that fluidity, to find that level where you can adapt and shift, right? So with that being said, I just want to say, what was that? Peace and much love.
Come on, man. If you're going to do it.
Okay, hold on.
Do it all the way.
No, lead it. Love, lead it.
Like my dear grandmother say, before she passed away, God bless her soul, she used to say, peace. And much love to you.
Much love to you. All right.
All right, IT.
All right, T. Take care of yourself, yeah? Peace. All right, y'all. So that was the episode, season 1 finale of Freestyle Friday. I greatly appreciate everybody for tapping in and checking in. for this week's guest, Lupe Fiasco. And so for the most part, I definitely encourage everybody to go back and listen to all those previous episodes, to go check out our page for all this content. Come back to this episode so you can catch these miscellaneous gems and things of that nature that you might have missed. I think there was a lot to extract from this episode. So either way, I'm Greg Newman, and I appreciate everybody for dropping in. And yeah, as to what Lou IT said, peace and much love to you. Until next time. Next week, Friday, same time, same place. See you then.